My parents left me in a foster family when I was 13 to travel with my sister, and now they're jobless. So I gave them everything they deserved. I stood in front of their dilapidated house, holding a folder of documents. Inside were their debts, bank statements, and correspondence I'd bought from their so-called friend. 10 years ago, they thought I'd vanish, like some useless thing they'd thrown away. But I came back, and I knew everything. The door creaked, and my mother, seeing me, turned pale as a ghost. Her eyes, once so confident, now trembled with fear. "What are you doing here?" she stammered. I smiled, tossing the folder onto the doorstep. "Repaying debts, mine and yours." For 10 years, I pieced together the truth. At 13, I believed they'd return. They promised. It's just for a year, for Liza's health. I stayed with strangers, in a house where I was fed but not loved. Letters came rarely, dry as autumn leaves. "We're in Italy. Liza's happy." Not a word about me. I waited, but hope faded. At 16, I found their old laptop in a box of their things. It held photos. Liza on a yacht, my parents in fancy restaurants, champagne. No hint of health issues. They weren't saving my sister. They chose her, and discarded me. That moment changed everything. I realized I wasn't their son. I was a burden. They got rid of me to live without limits. But I refused to stay a victim. I started digging, searching, learning. Years later, I discovered their travels were funded by scams. They took money from investors, promising startups, but never delivered. They lived off others' funds until they couldn't. When they returned to Ukraine, penniless and in debt, they thought I'd let it go. I knocked on their door not to forgive. I came to end their game. The folder held everything: contracts, proof of their fraud. I'd bought their debts for pennies, becoming their creditor. My mother tried to speak, but I raised my hand. "You left me. Now it's my turn." Their eyes filled with panic as I walked away. This was the start of their downfall and my triumph. At 13, I didn't understand why they abandoned me. They said they were going for a year, with Liza for her health. I stayed in a foster family, believing they'd return. They promised to write, but contact dwindled. I was a scared kid, hoping for reunion. A year became 2, then 5. Letters came every 6 months, cold. "We're in Italy. Liza's happy." Nothing about me. The foster family was kind, but I felt like an outsider. I couldn't settle, couldn't grasp why I wasn't needed. At 16, I found their laptop in a box. I entered the password, Liza's birthday, not mine. Inside were dozens of photos. Liza on a yacht, parents in restaurants, designer bags. No sign of health issues. They lived in luxury while I slept in a cramped room. Each photo cut like a knife. I lay awake, replaying their words. "We'll come back." They lied. They abandoned me. That laptop woke me up. I stopped waiting. I swore to find the truth. If they discarded me, I had to know why. I searched for them online, but their profiles were private. I noted everything: friends' names, cities. The foster home had an old computer, and I spent hours learning to track information. I found Liza's old posts with a geolocation, Barcelona. It was my first lead. The truth was out there, and I'd find it, even if it took years. I couldn't be weak. Every lie, every month without them, made me stronger. I got a part-time job washing dishes. Every penny went toward the day I'd face them. I didn't know what I'd do, but I knew they'd pay for what they stole, not just my childhood, but my faith and family. I searched for them online, hoping for a clue. But their profiles were locked, contacts dead. They hid their tracks, as if they knew I might come. But Liza posted photos with geolocations: Barcelona, Lisbon, Milan. She bragged about her perfect life. I created a fake account, posing as a school friend. "Wow, Liza, you live so cool," I wrote. She took the bait within a week. She shared that they lived in Portugal, rented a villa, called themselves travel bloggers. She sent videos: my mother in a designer dress, my father with a new watch. I read and clenched my fists. While I fixed computers for pennies at 15, they sipped wine on terraces. I became methodical. I noted details: restaurants, brands, dates. Their blog was mediocre. A few thousand followers, some ads. But a villa costs thousands monthly. Where was the money? I spotted their old friend Oleg, a businessman, in a photo. I found his profile, messaged him, posing as a journalist. He revealed they'd borrowed 50,000 euros from him and vanished. He wasn't the only one they scammed. It was my first proof. Their life was built on lies. Liza was the key. She wasn't cautious. I kept messaging, prying for details. I thought they were just selfish, choosing Liza over me. But their posts were too perfect. Designer clothes, restaurants, a villa. No mention of work. I paid a hacker $200 for access to their email. It held letters from investors demanding money for a startup. My parents promised a revolutionary platform, took tens of thousands, but launched nothing. I found contracts with fake names. They weren't bloggers, they were con artists. I found my mother's email. Liza's our star, photogenic. He's too serious, not for this life. They chose her because she fit their brand. I was a burden. I dug deeper. The hacker got their bank statements. Money came from offshore accounts, withdrawn in cash. They lived without thinking of tomorrow. But I knew such schemes weren't eternal. Investors hired lawyers. Their perfect life was cracking. I didn't wait for it to collapse. I wanted to control their fate. I kept messaging Liza, prying. She boasted about a €2,000 bag, but complained that my parents were stressed about papers. They felt the pressure. It was my chance. I hoped Liza was innocent, that she didn't know about me. I messaged her about her brother. She replied, "My brother? He chose to live separately. We don't need him." Cold, no regret. She knew they'd abandoned me and didn't care. I reread her words, searching for empathy, but found none. She didn't even use my name. I was the brother who chose to be left. It hurt worse than my parents' betrayal. I thought she wasn't complicit, but she was part of their game. I checked her through the hacker. She got a cut from their schemes, advertised small brands, playing the blogger. She was bait for investors, part of their facade. I messaged her, posing as a fan, asking how she succeeded. She said, "Believe in yourself and have cool parents." I restrained myself from revealing the truth. Emotions wouldn't help. I needed evidence. Her words fueled my resolve. My family didn't just abandon me. They were all complicit. I stopped seeking reconciliation. I wanted justice. I could have forgotten them, started anew. At 20, I had a job, friends, plans. But I couldn't forgive how they stole my dreams of family. Their betrayal shaped me. I used my anger as fuel. I took 3 jobs, studied programming, built an IT company in 4 years. Not for fame, but for resources. I washed dishes, delivered food, coded at night. I slept 4 hours, but every minute was an investment. When exhaustion hit, I recalled Liza's words. He chose. I landed an IT job for $300. At 22, I built a team, created an app for businesses. The company grew, gave connections, money. I didn't dream of yachts. I dreamed of facing them. I tracked them via Liza's social media. Their blog faded, posts rare. They returned to Ukraine, living in my grandmother's house. I hired an accountant, a lawyer, to prepare. Every dollar was part of the plan. I was ready for the endgame. Their blog faded. Liza posted less. Photos lost their shine. They returned to Ukraine, settling in my grandmother's house. But they pretended all was fine, begging for donations for projects. I hired a detective. He found lawsuits from investors for €120,000, frozen accounts, debts of $200,000. They planned to flee to Georgia, mortgaging the house. He got their emails. They sought new investors. I contacted creditors, bought debts for $80,000. I controlled their property. I sent an anonymous letter. "Your debts are bought." Await a meeting. They panicked, tried selling the house, but no one bought. Liza stopped posting. My mother begged friends for loans. They were cornered, and I held the strings. I could have watched them drown, but I wanted them to feel the humiliation I felt at 13. I compiled a dossier, contracts, emails, recordings. I hired a lawyer, contacted creditors, bought the remaining debts for $30,000. I prepared a folder with evidence, adding a handwritten note. You thought a 13-year-old wouldn't return. I didn't rush to court. I wanted them to feel trapped. I sent another anonymous letter to spark panic. Through the detective, I knew they weren't sleeping, arguing, seeking escape. But there was none. I controlled their fate. I was no longer the scared boy waiting for letters. 10 years of pain made me cold, strategic. I learned patience. Revenge isn't tears, it's control. I planned every step, from evidence to the moment I knocked. My company was my shield and sword. I hired lawyers, detectives, studied law, debt buyouts. I was careful, no mistakes. They thought I'd beg for forgiveness. But I came to take everything. Standing before their door, I felt calm. I knew I'd won. They no longer controlled my fate. I held their future. I knocked. The door opened, revealing their terrified faces. I wasn't their son. I was their judge. I entered the house, placed the folder on the table. These are your debts. I own them. My mother sobbed. My father mumbled about hard times. Liza stood silent, her eyes burning with anger. I showed the evidence, 200,000 euros. Lawsuits. Seizures. I decide what happens to you. I tossed a copy of my note. The 13-year-old returned. They tried to justify. My mother cried, "We didn't mean to hurt you." I didn't react. Their words held no weight. I showed messages from creditors waiting outside. Your house, car, everything goes to auction. I handed the documents to my lawyers. Within an hour, their property was seized. My mother screamed. Liza wept. My father stood, head bowed. I walked out. The evidence went to the police. They were summoned for questioning. Liza deleted her Instagram. Their friends turned away. They were left with nothing, in a cramped rented flat, penniless. I returned to my life. My company grew. I helped foster kids. Revenge was necessary. They stole my dreams, but I built new ones. On my office rooftop, looking at the city, I knew I was free. They remained in the shadow of their lies.